All right, Mark, why don't we get started and we'll turn it over to you.
All right, very good. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the March 9th Community Forum about the new Walpole Middle School project. We have representatives here from Compass Project Management and TAP A Architects. They're going to run us through this presentation. It's pretty exciting. You can see the first image right here. It kind of gives a realistic image as to what it looks like. So again, welcome. Please follow along. If you have any questions, you can enter them in the chat or raise a hand. If you see that little hand icon at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to the questions as the presentation goes along. So with no further ado, I think I'll turn it over to you, Brian. Is that correct, or do I go to Chris?
Do you want to walk through the building team real quick, or?
Well, I don't think I need to go through all the names. There's a slide here, everybody. If you could look at the names there, members of the school committee, the community at large, other town departments and committees that make up the school building committee. And, we've been working with Compass and TAP A for, it seems like it's almost 2 years now. And it's been exciting. Like I said, tonight's presentation, really things kind of come into view a little bit better.
Can I just add, not on this list, but with us tonight is one of our key design and team members, which is David Warner from Warner Larson Landscape Architects. So just want to make sure that's acknowledged that that he's here and he'll be talking through some of the site things.
Great. All right, we'll get going. So welcome everyone. Brian Jarvis with Compass Project Management. We're the owner's project manager for the project. Just a quick high-level general timeline of what is happening on the project this year. A lot of these are target dates that we're moving through. This is aligned with the Mass School Building Authority, or the MSBA's process. Currently moving left to right, we're in March, tonight's meeting. We are currently finishing up what's called the design development stage, or DD, where we started to put the first layer of real detail to the design of the project, more detail than what was seen back at town meeting time in the schematic design. We're in the process of selecting a construction manager, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. The goal is to get the design development, or the DD submission, back into the Mass School Building Authority by the end of the month, the first week of April. They will review that. They'll make some comments. We'll address those comments, and then we'll move into what is called construction documents, or CD phases, which will basically run from early April through the fall. And that is where all of the final details start to be put into the documents, so that the documents are ready to then finalize a construction price and also go out to bid for some of the trade contractors. Along the way, we plan to have additional community forums. Right now, we're targeting at least 3. The next one being in the May timeframe, and we'll talk a little bit more about that tonight, where we're going to get into a little bit more detail related to some of the work that might be happening this summer and early fall as the school comes back into session next year. There will be 2 more estimates in conjunction with the MSBA, one at the 60% CD stage and one at the 90% CD stage. We're actually doing one right now as part of the design development stage, but there'll be 2 more in addition to that. So actually 3 more cost estimate points since we've left the town meeting decision this past fall. That is making sure that the project is remaining on budget. That'll be reviewed by not only Compass and the project team, but also the MSBA to make sure that every step along the way is being aligned with the project budget. And as we finalize a construction price prior to construction, that the project is on budget. We are targeting 2 early packages of work. One is considered to be an enabling phase, which will happen sometime after school is out this year, leading into the fall. And then potentially this fall, starting with foundations on the new building. And we'll talk a little bit more about the enabling phase in a few slides. By the end of the year, we should have all the construction documents put together into a bid package. Since we've been working with a construction manager, we will actually be assembling the final construction price all along the way, but we still bid out the trade contractors, which are your plumbers, electricians, painters, tile floor. Those types of contractors are still bid. We would take those bids and fold those into the overall construction price and put that together towards the end of this year into the start of next year. We plan to start full construction potentially by the end of this year. So structural steel and actually starting to erect the building. The community forums that you see are target dates. We'll obviously adjust those based on when we think will be a good time for folks to meet. We'll definitely have one prior to the start of school, potentially right after the start of school as well, and obviously before we get into full construction. There might be a need for more depending on what information needs to be shared, but we will keep that updated as we move along. This timeline will be posted to the website after tonight's meeting, so you can reference that at your leisure. Talking about bringing on the construction manager, we're currently doing that right now. So we started that process after the town approved the project. We submitted an application to the Inspector General's office. They have to review that to make sure that the project is actually set up and is benefit from having a construction manager at risk. They review that and get back to us and issue what's called a notice to proceed. They did that in January. We sent out, it's a two-step procurement process. We sent out an RFQ, request for qualifications, to see what construction managers are interested. They submit back what is called a statement of qualifications, basically their resume saying that yes, they have the experience, et cetera, to do this type of project. The town has created a qualification and selection committee. We've reviewed those statements of qualifications. We received 8 of those from 8 interested firms in the beginning of February. We've since narrowed that down to a short list of 4 at the start of this month. And we will be receiving what's called proposals from a request for proposals as the next step. Those are due in 2 weeks from now. And we anticipate having interviews with all 4 shortlisted firms by the end of the month. And the goal would be to get the selected firm on board in April. And one of the benefits of construction manager at risk is the construction manager or the contractor will actually join the project team during design and help with things like estimating, like working through the phasing and logistics of the project, like looking at the construction documents and making sure all the details are correct and things can be built the way they're designed and they're not going to run into issues. So it is an advantage. It does allow us to kind of put together the project team earlier in the process so we can hit the ground running when construction starts. And one of the key features that we think is important for this job, given the climate of the construction industry, is having that real-time input from the contractor who will be building it as we're doing our estimates all along the design phase to get real-time pricing from the market, from subcontractors that they could potentially use on the project. So we have the most up-to-date pricing information to make sure the project stays on budget. And just big picture timeline, quickly, as I mentioned, there could be some early packages this summer that we'll talk about really related to the enabling phase and getting the bird site ready for construction. So when school resumes next year, that we have the access and the temporary roadways and or parking lots and separation from construction space and school space set up in advance, and then potentially starting on foundations of the new building as early as this fall, with full construction towards the end of this year in December. Overall construction is estimated to take 32 months, give or take. And again, we'll be working through all of this with the construction manager when they're on board to refine some of these details and timelines, et cetera. But we're anticipating 3 phases at this point: the enabling phase that I mentioned, building the new building, and then once that building is complete and Bird and Johnson are able to move in, then demolishing the existing Bird school building, finishing the site, which includes the parking lot, some of the access roads, and final landscaping and things of that nature. The new building will be open for occupancy right now, targeting fall of 2024, with the project completed sometime early in 2025, obviously allowing for the spring weather and landscaping and things like that. And we anticipate that the project would be closed out potentially as early as the following year, 2026, which means all the construction work is done, all the punch lists are done, all of the final information is closed out, the final payment application has been done, all of that's been sent into the Mass School Building Authority, who actually will perform a final audit of everything. They hold the last 5% reimbursement to the town until that audit is complete. That process takes about 10 months to a year. So potentially by the beginning of 2026, the district would actually receive its final reimbursement back from the MSBA and the project would be closed. So pretty tight timeline, but this is fairly typical for MSBA type projects. So moving into the enabling phase and some of the things that we are talking about, what we need to do in order to prep the site for construction. And again, these details are going to be refined and changed and tweaked once we get the construction manager on board, which will be a huge advantage, actually having the contractor help put all this together versus a design bid build environment where we'd have to come up with the plan and basically send it out to bid and then hope that we captured everything correctly. So just big picture, Washington Street is to your right. The existing bird is in the orange outline here. And then East Street is to your left. Right now, what we're thinking about for enabling phase, which would be after school is out this summer, in some capacity, is the plan is to get the layout and the new driveway out to East Street constructed. The goal for that is to allow, when the school resumes in the fall at some point, allowing the buses to come down, drop off behind the school, and then exit out to East Street to help with circulation. Parents and staff would still come in the main entrance now at Bird for Washington Street, come down, there'd be a drop-off loop, and then they would cycle back out. Staff parking lot would be relocated over into the field. And then that would open up what is the construction site or the footprint of the new building. Parameters, though, will be, this needs to be completed 100% before they could block off the existing drop-off lane and take over this footprint. So the contract and the documents will be set up in a way that until that's done, they can't take this over and they can't be doing any of this work around the school while school is in session. So most likely they'll be completing the things around the school this summer and then getting as far as they can with some of this other work that could possibly be fenced off in the fall out of the way of the school while school is in session. The overall big picture as well is that the fields that are at Bird will remain in operation, both the baseball fields, the soccer field in the fall, the softball field, et cetera, youth soccer. The road is going to basically follow the property line and the tree line, still allowing for full baseball field for the junior varsity and full baseball field for the varsity as well as the soccer field. So those will remain in operation. We'll be working with the contractor to make sure that's the case. And then the construction entrance would actually use East Street for the majority of construction traffic, being able to come in that new driveway where it's just bus traffic and not parents, and then be able to get access to the site this way. Most likely there might be an emergency gate on this side, but we'll work that through with both the contractor and the public safety officials. But that's the general concept of what we're working on. And again, we'll have more information at the next community forum in May once we work through that with the contractor. And they potentially will be attending that forum as well with even more detail. Following the enabling phase will actually be the construction of the building. So once we're able to isolate the school's operation with the temporary bus loop and the drop-off loops and the parking, the construction fence will go up and construction will happen on the footprint of the new school, which you see here in the dotted red line. Relatively close to the existing building. However, this is very typical for a lot of current school projects simply because the existing school sites in many towns is the only site that's large enough to actually fit new school buildings. We've done this many times before. Most recently at the Natick Middle School, we were as close as 20 to 30 feet between the two existing buildings at certain aspects of construction. We also did this at Norwood High School, if you're familiar with that site, building the brand new high school directly behind the old high school. But most of our school projects, probably 90% plus, involve some form of the new building either in front or in back of an existing school and then taking down the building once that's complete. So something we're very familiar with. The contractors that we will be interviewing all are very familiar with that. They've done many similar projects. So we will make sure to mitigate as many impacts to the school as possible. But we'll be back to you with more details in May, but this is the general phasing of what we plan to do. Set up the enabling phase this summer and the fall, build the new building for approximately 2 years. And then finally, when that's all done, tear down the old building and finish the site. And with that, I'll transition over to TAP A and Warner Larson to talk a little bit about the site plan.
I think, David, you're up.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Thank you, Brian. David Warner with Warner Larson Landscape Architects. And the plan that you're looking at is after all of the construction is complete. Brian showed you how the phasing would work. But just this is an overview, and then I'm going to zoom in and focus on the circulation on the next slide. But East Street is to the left and Washington Street is to the right. Preserving the baseball, all of the athletic fields is a very important part of the overall design concept in routing that new bus driveway coming in off of the street close to the property line. Another key component to the site design was preserving as many trees as we go over Washington Street side, that natural character of entering the site. And it's also relatively narrow in terms of its buildable area and topography. It's sloping. It was not really a highly utilizable area. So we're keeping the existing driveway location coming off of Washington Street, widening it, the next turning lane. But so as you're coming into the site from either direction, it can accommodate buses and cars, but the parent drop-off is coming in off of Washington Street, just as it is today and as it is in the phasing diagram. And you'd be coming in and looping around through and around parking area, the main parking area, and back out to Washington Street. Buses can also come in that route and go across the front plaza of the school area and exit out to East Street. But the buses can also come in off of East Street and go through the loop closest to the gym on the north side of the building and back out to East Street. And separating those two areas is this pedestrian zone that really is one of the highlights to the site plan. And I'll show you on a future slide, but that's a pedestrian zone, connects the middle part of the school over to the athletic fields and separates the most of the car, well, all of the car and most of the bus traffic. And so I think that's pretty much the, and pedestrian routes, I really want to focus on that as well. We have the walkway coming through the path, through the woods off of Washington Street now, and that's coming into the site and only crossing that one emergency drive at the back there. It doesn't cross any other vehicular zones and gets you right to the front entrance. So you wrap around the school building. And we also have improvements to the existing pathway that's coming in south of the ball fields from East Street. And that will come up the slope between the parking lot and the fields. That's where the existing bird school is now, that main parking area you saw in the previous diagrams. And there's a considerable grade change that occurs between that parking area and the fields, somewhere around 8 feet. And so we have those walkways that diagonally come up that slope to get to that pedestrian zone that I mentioned previously. If we go to the next slide, then I really wanted to focus on some of the primary program elements. Again, this is, a high-level view showing the entire site, but I think we can just go right to the next slide and zoom in so it's a little easier to see. The things that we really wanted to focus on with this are the types of outdoor spaces that are going to be part of the experience for the general public coming to the site, and also for the school community using the outdoor spaces around the school. So let's start first with that pedestrian zone. That image that you see in the lower left is a 3D view, and you'll see some bigger pictures of these renderings later in the presentation. But that's a grove of trees that separates the bus loop from the car drop-off and park area, and provides that pedestrian link between the school building and the fields, and to the East Street way. The area to the north of the building, on the upper end of the building, we see as a significant opportunity outside the cafeteria, and you also have, your auditorium on that end of the building. We've got this outdoor space, that three-dimensional view you see there, number 4, outdoor cafe and amphitheater, creates this space where you can, teachers can take students outside that are directly adjacent to those supporting facilities inside the building. And then the other spaces that we have identified as number 3, there are 3 of those, 3 number 3s, that are outdoor classrooms. So those are directly adjacent to spaces inside the building where teaching occurs. The classroom portion of the building concentrated in the south half of the footprint that you see there. And those spaces that you see are going to be really great indoor-outdoor relationships as far as that's concerned. We have a school garden at number 5, and the main entrance plaza that connects out to that grove that I started with. So I've gone full circle around the building. I think with that, we could continue on.
Okay, thank you, David. So these are the floor plans as they've been modified and updated over the course of design development. Largely the same. Some of the details have changed in the sense of developing the program layouts and things like that. But I'll just give you a quick lay of the land. Is that the first floor, second floor, third floor obviously is going from left to right. The southern half of the building, which is being circled right now, is the classroom blocks, and they are exactly the same on all three floors, which you can see through this color coding that it stacks perfectly, going from floor to floor to floor. And so the sort of I'm going to call it light red color or salmon. I don't know what color you see those as, but the main those colors there are the classrooms, and that's pretty typical on each floor. So there's the teaching model for the middle school is based on team teaching. So there's a core team of teachers that teach students, and they collaborate across disciplines. So this is divided up into 3 teams per grade, and then 3 floors to cover the 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. And so those are the 3 teaching team blocks, and they each comprise of 4 general classrooms plus a science classroom and sort of a resource classroom, or more like a special ed kind of small group classroom within those components that help any students who need any sort of assistance of any kind, or even another breakout space if time to time it's required. One of the key features of the classroom blocks is that you can see there's a shape to the corridor between all of the classrooms, and that opens up the classrooms to have some extended learning zones. So a lot of times teachers want to have some breakout space to send some students to do work. If you walked the halls of the middle school or the high school, or frankly probably any elementary schools nowadays too, at any point in time you might see a couple of students here and there kind of sitting on the floor against the wall doing some work together, or collaborating in a certain way if they're huddling to do an assignment. And so this building is sort of purpose built to accommodate things that already happen within the district, just to one degree or another. And it makes it more purposeful rather than accidental, and captures those spaces as extended learning zones. Each classroom team so it really, the concept here is make what becomes a big middle school and start to bring it down in scale so that it's more manageable and not hopefully it's not scary for middle school students to want to come and be a part of it. Then moving up north from there, you have the big blue blocks that are a part of the classroom wings, which is course and art. Those stack on all 3 floors, and then the bigger blue spaces, which become the auditorium and band. And so there's this, you can almost see the diagram start to develop, that there's this sort of arts block that plugs into the diagram, and it transverses through the entire building and connects through. The brown blocks on the first floor are the admin area. That's where the main office is, and assistant principals and nurses. And then on the second floor in the same area is guidance in that area. The green area on the second floor next to the brown is the library or media center. And then also on the second floor are the gym and PE areas and locker rooms. The auditorium actually goes from the first floor to the second floor with stadium seating in the back of it. So it has a connection from first to second floor inside the space. And then back on the first floor, on the left, there's the cafeteria, which is the green space, and the kitchen, which is the gray space. And those kind of round out the floor plans for the first floor, and frankly, all 3 floors. The entry points, you can see there's a community entry, which is specifically designed to handle some of the larger capacity of evening events, either in the cafeteria or the auditorium, those larger spaces, or the gym on the second floor. The main entry does that too, but it's more meant for day-to-day entry for students and staff as they're arriving to the building. I think that covers the floor plans. You can go to the next slide. So just sort of bringing, sometimes floor plans are not the easiest to read, so we wanted to show an axon of that floor plan block for the classroom wings. So this is that bottom area could really be any floor, but we're showing you the first floor here. And this just gives you a more three-dimensional representation of what we just talked about. So again, the teams, there's two teams shown in this diagram, general classrooms in that area, then the science room are on the main corridor there, the toilet room blocks. And then what connects these two groups of classrooms is the big technology room, and that's on all three floors. You might hear us refer to that as STEAM, which is an acronym for science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And then each of these wings is bookended with stairs on either end. And so you can start to see those come to life in this view as well. I didn't mention it before, but lots of natural daylight. You can see some of the windows showing up in these views too. So very calibrated and programmed natural daylighting so that, hopefully in the nice days when the sun is out, we can have a lot of the lights off and save energy in the building. You can go to the next slide. So these next few slides are a bunch of renderings and images that we've created to kind of bring alive the floor plans. This is the first of a few. It's a bird's eye view looking from the southwest side of the site towards the school. So Washington Street is off to the right-hand side. East Street is off to the left-hand side of this image, and you're looking sort of right dead center in the photo is the main entry. There's a little canopy there that kind of pokes out from the building to grab attention to the drive lane and connect with that central pedestrian plaza that David was talking about previously. And you can start to see some of the features and architectural elements of the building come alive. This building is, it's going to be mostly a brick building. There are some features of metal panel in some places, like around the stairs. We were trying to go for a simple palette that just matches sort of a natural tone on the site. Some of the other features is the media center over there. There's a big glass pop-up in the building. It's going to get a lot of good light for library. And then the gym you can see off to the north there that has this clerestory area of translucent material that lets daylighting in, and oftentimes we don't even need the lights on in the gym for that. So you can go to the next slide. So this is getting a little bit closer, not so bird's eye, but not ground level yet either. You can see a lot of the features David talked about earlier with some of the, benches and making sort of a park-like setting for the school. You can start to see some of the textures and delineations in materials. So again, just trying to be creative with how we use normal building materials, because these aren't premium, super expensive things. They're very durable, and they look great. And so we wanted to try to exercise that as much as we can, and that's also more affordable up in the long run. So we wanted to show those elements here. Go to the next slide. And again, getting just even closer again here, just sort of highlighting some of those park-like settings. You can go to the next one. So circling around towards the main entry, you can see that entry canopy poking out, and then this is that pedestrian plaza zone reaching across. There'll likely be traffic cones or some kind of barrier set up in the mornings to prevent cars from going across this, but any buses that come from Washington Street would come across. But this is really intended most of the time to be just a pedestrian walking zone. On the wall to the right here, to the right of the stair, you can see how we can play with the brick patterns and just offset and inset bricks to create shadow lines, and that helps without adding expense to the project. It helps bring some character and expression to the building. You can go to the next slide. And just another close-up of the main entry and the entry canopy kind of being sheltered entry all the way into the building, and then the connection link in the background there that sort of connects the more public zone of auditorium, media, gym, that kind of stuff to the left, and then the more what we call secure or private zone of education that happens to the right. So we can go to the next slide. And still just like circling around here, looking at the main entry, you can go to the next slide. So here's the community entry, just just to the left of the main entry, and that's designated as such here, but this is really the quickest and best access to things like the gym and the auditorium, and it's right off of these main corridors of walking paths and things like that. You can go to the next slide. I think we've seen more detail here, just coming forward on these images. Okay, so jumping to the interiors, this is a view of that main link area. So the classroom wings are off in the distance in the background there. Behind this, or in the foreground of the image, would be the auditorium and administration areas. But what we're trying to highlight here is that one of the purposeful designs that we've seen in education nowadays is that these big buildings it benefits students from an anxiety perspective. So kind of harnessing in on the social and emotional side of learning, and also just their feeling of community if they can see where they're going, and then when they get there, see where they came from, and then always trying to have vistas to natural outside elements, and not have corridors that are very long and don't end with a window or something like that. So we're trying to do a lot of tying back to nature and just bringing in those elements here, a lot of daylight. And so this central stair is a way to kind of celebrate the center of the building, but also bring students back together to that little central location. So we're trying to exude a lot of school spirit here and make it a gathering place where, you know, it's kind of that organizing element in the building, both in plan and then vertically as it's extruded up through all 3 floors here at this very important link moment. So you can go to the next slide. So this is a look at one of those classroom wings. So you remembered me talking earlier about the breakout zones or those extended learning areas and the shaped hallways. This is what those might look like. Again, conceptual renderings here, but there's 2 classrooms off in the distance there to the doors you see. And then some locker rooms with lockers with counter space, and then clear path for egress, maintaining that of course, but also opening it up where you can have a couple spots for sitting or collaborating on purpose with furniture, again, so that and students may still elect to sit on the floor. We see that a lot anyway, but this just enables them to have a little bit of space to stretch out, and then you can see that the teachers can still monitor from the classrooms with windows and side lights in the doors. You can go to the next space. This is a view inside the classroom. There's some spots in the classrooms that are actually bumped out in the floor plan. So it's kind of a cozy spot for either a teacher's desk, or somebody may set it up, a teacher may set it up as a reading nook or something like that. But this is where the image is taken from here. And it has a little bit of a scaled down character relative to the rest of the room. And then looking across the room, you can see the whiteboards and the desks, and then the casework in the background, lots of storage for the students, a sink in every classroom, and then a countertop to do some work at and store some things. And then the wall on the left side of the room, which you don't see in the image, is another teaching wall that has the projection screen and on it that the teacher can project with interactive laser projectors. Here's an image of those technology spaces that connect all the floors, the classroom teams together in the middle, and it's sort of at the end of the main corridor. Again, that concept of being able to see through it to the outside, but you're seeing into one of the more innovative and creative technology spaces in the building. Again, one on every single floor. The design intent is that this wall could open up completely and create a big opening so that the room could free flow in and out if you're trying to connect more larger groups of people, or just have an open space. And so these are going to be really nice spaces. I think we have an interior shot of this coming up next. If you want to go to the next slide. So these are really kind of geared as just robust classrooms that are very agile and easy to use. Writing surfaces everywhere, rolling carts, tables, a lot of technology. You can see up in the ceiling in this image is a what we call pipe grid, and you can clamp things to it and make, you know, marble raceways or roller coasters, or put lights on there and do still life renderings or paintings. Any number of things you can do with these elements to really infuse. You know, we like to say when these rooms are built this way, they kind of the sky's the limit, and teachers are free to be creative as they can to bring the curriculum to life and engage the students in different ways. So. And then this is a view of the cafeteria. You heard David talk earlier about the amphitheater and sort of basketball courts out to the north side of the building. So this is I think this is going to be a very lovely vista out to a natural environment with woods and sloping topography, and then the elements that David mentioned earlier, including some outdoor seating for cafeteria and lunches when it's nicer weather. Middle schoolers may use it all year round. Sometimes they just do things like that, but so this is intended to be a very natural setting, and we wanted the cafeteria to be nice and light all the way to the end. So this area is 2 stories on the right, and then you see the glass at the end, and then the cafeteria, and then also above that 2-story space is a skylight to give some natural lighting when we don't need all the lights on. So I think this will be a really great space, really nice element to the building. You can go to the next slide if you want. This is the final one. It's the gym on the 2nd floor. You can see all the lighting that comes through in this rendering. It won't quite be that clear or that sunny because the direct light is diffused when it comes through the translucent panels, but we are excited about the gym and the possibilities that it brings to you to have all the teaching stations you need. To the left of this image actually is the rest of the school. You're looking off to the west in this image. But just to the left of this image out of sight is an auxiliary gym that's sort of really another half-court sized gym to complement this full-size court. And so get a lot of usage and teaching stations out of all of this. So I believe that's all we have. And I think we could pause and take any questions or comments.
Yes, if you have any questions, if you would just write them down in the chat and we can take a look at them and get your questions answered. So we'll take about a minute and just wait, see if there's any questions.
I think we got them all.
Just taking a look, let me see. Scroll through, got them all. We do have one. Is the color scheme of the exterior of the building finalized? Great question.
No, I think the intent, we showed architectural intent, and renderings are hard. I'll just be the first one to be honest with you about renderings and trying to input graphics into a computer and then get it to spit it back out in the exact same color that is intended. But the intent is that the materials shown being mostly masonry type materials on the building, and then the intent of being more natural and neutral in the color expressions and not bright, overly done colors, I think is where we're heading. But you know, to the extent of saying, does it have to be that brown or that tan or that, you know, white is not set in stone and final. That won't be done until later in the construction document process, and even really not final complete until the contractor submits the final products, which will be during construction, sometime early in construction.
There's another question. Just Brian, could you just go over the timeline again?
They want the overall project, I think.
Just said that, sorry if I missed the beginning, if you could just, hold on, let me find it again. Do you have an expected timeline for everything? So that's perfect right there.
Yep. Yeah, so we're in design right now. We're anticipating completing design by the end of the year. We are using the construction manager at risk process, so we're able to bring the contractor on board during design. We're also able to start some of the work early before the design is totally completed. One thing being the potential enabling work and the site work this summer after school's out into the fall, and potentially starting with foundations in the fall as well to get a jump start on the schedule. Then construction will really begin end of this year and last all the way through the summer of 2024. The goal would be to be completed with the building in the summer of 2024, so that the building could open for the start of that school year, the 24-25 school year, which would be finishing the second phase of the building. Once the school moves in, we would then demolish the existing building and complete the parking lots and the finished landscaping, et cetera, in the spring of 2025. So the school would open right now, anticipated for the fall of 2024, with the construction being completed in the spring of 2025, with the project being closed out and all final reimbursements back to the town by the start of 2026.
All right, thanks, Brian.
Can I add a follow-on question to that, just so it's clear to people, is that you anticipate, or I'll ask it to you, Bridget. Do you anticipate moving both school populations into the Bird School in 2024? Is that the plan?
Yeah, as soon as when it opens, then we'll transition both populations in at the same time. That's what we're anticipating.
Okay.
Another person said, these plans look amazing. Will this still be called Bird Middle School or Walpole Middle School? I can answer that one. I would say that, this hasn't been decided. We've always been referring to it as the Walpole Middle School during preparation, during the project. We've been referring it to Walpole Middle School, so that's what we'll continue to refer to it as. I know it's early. Will all rooms have air conditioning? Also, where are the special education rooms located on the teams?
Brian, it's page 12. I think you have it in the floor plan there. So I'll start with the second portion of that first. The special ed classrooms are anything in orange. That's what's designated in that regard. So just a little background on this is we submit a plan to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and we submitted this plan, and it was very favorably received for the way that it's dispersed on every floor through every grade equally, and so it kind of brings that component of the program, very important component, back into the entire building and throughout all grades, and so that's really a strategic move, and has a lot of benefits on that. So, and then in terms of air conditioning, the project is getting a system that's called VRF, which is variable refrigerant flow. And you think of those, they're basically a heat pump system. And I think everybody's seen or has in their home the units that sit on the wall, high up on a wall or something like that. And then they blow the air out. And then there's a unit outside that does the condensing. The VRF system will be able to provide heating and cooling, and also do that simultaneously throughout the building, and also take the refrigerant that may be heated up from south-facing rooms and pump that over to north-facing rooms and recycle the energy that's in that throughout the building to create an equalized or normal temperature and atmosphere. And so, yes, it will be cooled. And can be set. So I think typically what we do is kind of set the set point of most of the air in the building to around 70 degrees, and then the teachers can adjust it in the rooms up or down a degree or two. And so you have kind of like a 3 to 4 degree swing on if you're too cold or too warm, and that usually does the trick for most everybody to stay comfortable. And it also is removing humidity, which is the big thing. You can still have a 75-degree room. If you pull the humidity out, it feels a lot more comfortable than with humidity. So, yeah, it'll be conditioned and comfortable.
Thanks, Chris. One comment, this looks fantastic. Thanks for all of your work on this. Very excited for my kids to attend. Couldn't agree more. It's extremely exciting. You know, lot of work, but what's really exciting is when you see these designs becoming more and more detailed and starting to come to life. And, you know, this isn't something that happens overnight. You know, it's a very long process with a lot of people involved. So thanks for that. Appreciate that. Another question, do the windows open to allow fresh air?
So the current plan is for them to open. Basically, it's a little bit of, it's what we call a hopper window. So they crank in or out. I think it's out in this case, and they will only open to a certain degree. So there's actually code requirements for commercial buildings and schools how far they can open. But yes, the plan will be that they will allow fresh air into the building, and we will also. The intent is to do some training for the occupants because these are high performance, very highly calibrated buildings, and the systems on them are very smart. And so we don't want the systems to work very hard to do the work they're supposed to do, and then someone opens a window and it counteracts that. And so we want to train the teachers to know when it's the right time to open windows and when it's not. And also just going to go ahead and add that the fresh air component to the building is already built in because that VRF system that I was talking about is 100% fresh air and 100% exhaust air. So when we're exhausting air from the spaces, it goes completely out of the building. It's not recirculated in the building in the sense of just taking room and or air and recirculating it through a coil and then putting it back in the room. It's sending it out and it's being replaced by fresh air coming into the building constantly. And there's a air change of, several times per hour to make sure the fresh air is happening, even when the windows aren't open. So I just want to make sure that's known.
Thank you. Can some of you talk about the safety features that are in the building? When I talk about safety features, this person's talking about like school shooting prevention, school safety in terms of that.
Yeah, I can talk about that a little bit. Some of it we can't talk about, unfortunately. But some of the big features, we have people on our staff and talking through with the district and a security planner whose only job and consultancy on this project is for those things. There's a whole line of thinking that goes into design that's called crime prevention through environmental design, and the acronym for that is CPTED, or what people call CPTED. And that is really a whole body of design elements that are sort of gathered around how to prevent action before it happens just by the design of the school. So the see and be seen component is something that it sort of, some people argue it on both sides of the fence, but it's one of the mechanisms that if people are seen in the building, feel like they're part of the community, and are known to be there, then it prevents people who are in the building for the wrong reasons from getting in even further in the building. The building also has certain compartmentalization features where we can lock down parts of the building to prevent people from getting further into the building when the threat or when the nuisance is identified. There's safe entry at the vestibule to if 90+% of the time parents or visitors are coming to the school because a student forgot an instrument or lunch or something like that. We don't need to let all these people into the building. Currently at the Bird School, you have to go in the building and around the corner and down the hall to the principal's office. Right now, you can go into this vestibule where the cursor is, and you can't really get in further into the school without being allowed to do that. And if you just need to talk to an administrator for maybe an IEP meeting or something of that nature, you can go right into the conference room that's right there. And so this is a sort of, this is a more known feature. And then there's other layers of security that we've put into the building that are designed to not necessarily be out there. So
Thanks. Brian, I'll give you this one. Can you explain the bidding process and will we be getting information on who is chosen to build the school? Oh, you're on mute.
Go on mute, Brian.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, it wasn't popping up. Sure. So we are using Chapter 149A, which is the construction manager at risk process. So we are actually bringing a construction manager on during design, as I mentioned. We will be working with that firm all the way through design to put together what's called a guaranteed maximum price, or a GMP. So basically, the construction manager will start to build the project construction budget in line with our budget. They'll be doing that all through design, estimating along with the project team, starting to put together all the costs associated with the construction aspect. We still have a traditional bid process that we will be doing for all the trade contractors, which, as I mentioned before, are the HVAC contractor, the electrical, the plumbing, the painter. There's probably 15 of them on this project. That's a traditional bid. We will actually send out the bid documents. We'll pre-qualify trade contractors who will qualify to bid on this type of project, this size and scope. We'll get those bids back, and then the construction manager will take same thing, lowest responsible bidder, plug that into the overall construction budget that they're putting together, and then wrap that all up into a final number. So we have a lot of control in putting that number together. It's not as if we're just opening an envelope at the end of a bid process from a general contractor and that's the number. The owner actually is engaged all the way through. We're able to work through the scope with the designer to make sure that we can move scope around, take scope in and out to make sure we're maintaining budget. We actually get to sit with the construction manager and vet all of their non-bid contractors. So their site contractor, for example, or the landscape contractor or the drywall contractor, they still need to go out and procure multiple prices. We actually get to see all of those quotes and go through, make sure that those vendors actually have all of the right scope. And we're just not relying on a bid by a contractor at the end of a bid process. So there's actually a more intense bidding process or a pricing process with a construction manager, but it's more open book and the owner's involved all the way through.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Any other questions? Brian and Chris, I assume we'll put this up on the middle school building project webpage. And then also if people have questions, they can continue to email any one of us or go to the middle school building project webpage. And there's an email address that they can click to send to you, correct?
Yep, that's right. We'll load this tomorrow. I think it's middle school project at the school's address. If they go to the school's website, the middle school project website is right there on the homepage. If they click on that, there is an email link as well, and they can send that, and that goes to the project team. And they can also see all the other presentations that have been done previously.
Excellent. All right. And I think that's it for our questions. So anybody else for the panelists for the good of the order? Good. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming. I hope this was informative and exciting to see some of these designs. And please don't please don't hesitate to reach out to any one of us if you have any further questions or comments. So thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.